The day the CEO fired me, he smiled like he had just won. What he didn't know was that the biggest client in the company trusted only one person. Me. And when I walked out of that building, the $500 million deal walked out with me. I had worked at the company for 6 years. Long nights, weekend meetings, flights across the country just to secure clients. I wasn't famous inside the company, but people knew one thing. If a deal was impossible, they gave it to me. And that's exactly how I ended up handling the largest client in the company's history. A $500 million contract. The client was difficult. They didn't trust corporations. They hated corporate politics. But somehow they trusted me. Maybe because I always told them the truth. For months, I worked day and night preparing the final presentation. This deal would change the company forever. Everyone knew it. But there was one person who didn't like that attention. The CEO. His name was Richard Blake. He loved control. And he hated when someone else in the company started getting recognition. At first, it was small things. He stopped inviting me to meetings. He took credit for ideas I presented. Sometimes he would interrupt me in front of the board. But I ignored it, because the deal mattered more. Finally, the day of the big presentation arrived. The boardroom was full. Executives. Investors. The CEO sitting at the head of the table. My laptop was ready. Slides prepared. Months of work about to be revealed. But before I could even begin, the CEO cleared his throat. Before we start, he said, I have an announcement. The room went silent. He looked straight at me. We've decided to restructure the team. And unfortunately, your role is no longer required. For a moment, I thought it was a joke. But it wasn't. I'm firing you, he said calmly. Right there. In front of everyone. Some people looked shocked. Others looked down at the table. The CEO leaned back in his chair like he had just proven a point. Security was called. I packed my laptop quietly. No shouting. No arguing. Just silence. As I walked toward the door, the CEO said one last thing. Don't worry. We'll handle the client from here. I almost smiled, because he had no idea what he had just done. You see, that client didn't sign contracts with companies. They signed contracts with people. And their contact person was me. I left the building and sat in my car. My phone buzzed 5 minutes later. It was the client. I heard something strange, the client said. They told me you're no longer with the company. I took a deep breath. That's correct. There was silence on the line. Then the client said something that changed everything. Well, if you're not there anymore, we're not interested in working with them. I almost laughed, because the CEO thought he had taken the deal from me. But in reality, the deal had always been mine. 2 days later, the company tried to continue the presentation without me. It didn't go well. The client refused to continue the meeting. They asked only one question. Where is he? The executives tried to explain. But the client stood up and said, we trusted him, not your company. And they walked out. That's when panic started. Inside the company, phones were ringing. Investors asking questions. The board demanding answers. Because losing a $500 million client wasn't just embarrassing, it was catastrophic. Meanwhile, I was sitting in a small coffee shop across town, thinking about what to do next. That's when my phone rang again. This time it wasn't the client. It was the board of directors. They asked if we could meet. Apparently, the CEO hadn't told them the full story. When the board discovered the client trusted only me, they realized the mistake. A huge mistake. We met that evening. One of the directors leaned forward and asked a simple question. If we remove the CEO, would you consider returning? I looked at them for a moment. Then I shook my head. No. Because something had changed. For the first time in years, I realized I didn't need them. The client called me later that night. We're starting a new project, they said. And we want you leading it. 6 months later, that same $500 million contract was signed. But not with my old company. With my new consulting firm. And the funniest part? My former company had to watch the announcement on the news. The CEO who fired me was removed 2 weeks after the deal collapsed. The board blamed him for losing the biggest opportunity in company history. And me? I finally understood something important. Sometimes the worst thing your boss can do is fire the one person their biggest client actually trusts. Because when that person leaves, the deal leaves too.